Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the One Hit Point Podcast, the show where we talk about video games, D&D, and all things nerdy. I'm your host, Noah, joined by my good friend and co-host,
Jack.
And today we have a very special guest with us. He's written hundreds of articles on TTRPGs, multiple supplements on monsters, maps, and more, and of course, the Lazy DM/GM series. Welcome to the show, Mike, a.k.a. Sly Flourish.
Hello. So we're going to talk about the Steam Machine, right? Is that our topic today?
We only wanted to talk about controversial video game equipment.
Sure, yeah.
But seriously, thanks for taking the time to join us, and we have so much to pick your brain about.
Great.
But before we get into your current Kickstarter, The Rise of Lazy GM, I just wanted to kind of go back a little bit. Can you tell us about your kind of beginnings with TTRPGs?
Sure.
What you were playing, kind of that stuff?
Yeah, sure. So I actually started with a computer RPG. The Pool of Radiance, the SSI Gold Box games way back in the 80s. And I remember, Pool of Radiance and Curse of the Azure Bonds and whatever. I don't remember the other two. What was it? There was a Savage Lands one. And I played those, and I really liked them. On my app, I had a bootleg Apple IIc clone called the Laser 128, a really archaic piece of tech. And but I played it on there, and I was like, I don't understand the rules of this at all. Like, what is going on in this game? Like, why is my armor class going down, but that's somehow better? And I ended up buying a copy of the, I guess at the time it was the second edition Player's Handbook to mostly understand the rules of the computer game I was playing. But then in high school, kind of dragged some friends into it who had played with their older siblings, and we had a group. So this was in the late 80s. And played a small campaign set in the Forgotten Realms, using the Forgotten Realms books, where they battled Lord Manchun and convinced him to blow up his own tower with a broken staff of the Magi, which, it was really fun. And so I had a really good time with that. Then went to college, played a little bit in college, but then got into Magic the Gathering mostly in college. Graduated college, came to DC, to Washington, D.C. area. Met my wife through EverQuest, the massive online game EverQuest. And I had been writing a bunch of articles. Whenever I get into a topic, I write a ton of articles about it. And I've been doing that since I was 20. So whether it was home theater or fountain pens or computer tech or video games or EverQuest or whatever, I was always writing about something. And so anyway, through my wife, who my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, we had a group that played 3rd edition D&D. And pretty much, and then we played a bunch of 3rd edition D&D. Then we got married and got a house. And as soon as we got the house, we started playing a regular weekly game. This was in 2006, and now that game has been going for 20 years.
No way.
Yeah, we have a 20-year long game. A friend of mine who's been in the game had a newborn daughter who's now in high school, right? So we have the whole kind of. Yeah, the group's been going on a long time. Players have been rotating in and out, but some of them have rotate out and then they come back, and they rotate out and they come back. I got one friend of mine who's been in and out numerous times, which is great, right? We have a nice flexible group. And around the 5th edition D&D time, I started another group at a local game shop, and that has turned into another home game on Sunday. After COVID, we played online, and then when we started getting back together again, we started going to my friend's place to do it. So that one's been going on for about 12 years, or about 10 or 11 years. Yeah, so I got that game's been going. And then the same friends that I was playing with back when Michelle and I weren't married yet, we are still playing with them online about twice a month. And that's been going on for a long time too. So I've been very lucky to have lots of groups.
Is that three regular games?
3 regular groups, yeah. And finally, I finally backed off from one of them. So one of them I am now, actually we're having our first game tomorrow. No, tomorrow, Sunday or Saturday, and I'm going to be a player in that. So the nice thing is that I get to play for a little while. I just finished a Daggerheart campaign for that group, and then said I'm tired. I need to, I got too many, and so my friend Chris is picking it up, who we've played with for more than 20 years. So yeah.
Oh, sorry. Can you spoil for us what character you're playing a little bit?
Yeah. Well, so we don't know yet, right? When we're going to be doing a session 0 where we kind of come with concepts, but I have 2 concepts in mind. It's I forget it's like Frontier of the Borderlands. It's like a Keep of the Borderlands style game, but we're doing it in Fantasy Age. Fantasy Age is the system that we're playing for that, which I've played like a one-shot in, but I've never really played more than that, but I like it. I like what I've read. And I'm either going in with a like a carefree fighter, two-hand weapon fighter who just kind of wants to go see what's out past the walls, what kind of adventures out there, but also is looking for his father, right? His father's out there somewhere, and I don't know if it's good or bad. I haven't decided. Like, it could be good, could be bad. I think I'll leave that till I find him.
Leave that up.
He has a complicated, a complicated relationship with his old man, and we'll see how that happens. Or probably a mage, or like a wizard who is convinced after reading all of the books on adventuring that he's ready to be an adventurer, and is going to go out there and tell everybody what they're doing wrong.
So a real Girl Scout kind of
no practical experience whatsoever, but has read every book on the topic and is quite confident.
That's amazing.
Of how it's going to be out. So those, one of those two. We'll see which one kind of lands.
So I guess like this will probably kind of dovetail us into your whole methodology of GMing, but I am curious, like how, like, when you started GMing, did you start as a player or as a GM?
I've always been GMing. I mean, since I was 13.
Always. Yeah. So, like, at what point, like, throughout your years of GMing, did you kind of land on this, like, lazy GM play style?
So I can tell you So about 2012, right? It was before D&D 2014 was out. It was at the tail end of 4th edition D&D. And I had started to get more exposure to other RPGs like Fate, and I keep Fate and Dungeon World, and there were some others. Powered by the Apocalypse was. I don't know if Powered by the Apocalypse was a thing yet. Apocalypse World was, and so the concepts are starting to show up in other RPGs too. And I was starting to get more exposure to other RPGs, and so 4th edition D&D was a prep heavy game, right? Like you really, when you designed your adventures for that, you knew what was going to happen, and you're mostly setting up like big combat scenes, because that's all you'd had the time to do in 4th edition. And I remember talking to a lot of GMs and reading a lot of people's experiences and hearing from the designers of the games who were all kind of leaning towards this concept that like the less you prep, the better your game is, to a point. So I kind of dove into that, and I spent more time kind of looking into it. And I wrote the first book called The Lazy Dungeon Master and published it in 2012. I think that's right. And that one was about like how, this concept that has remained to this day, which is how do you get more from your game by preparing less, right? Like where are the areas where you can hold, where you can hold back on the things that you would normally prep, and it ends up actually making your game better at the same time. That book was a little optimistic in it, though. Like it was like you can prep in 5 minutes or 15 minutes with 3 steps and you're done. And I was like, I don't even follow that advice, right? Like I wrote it. So that's when when the book came out, though, it was very popular, and the people were. I was getting lots of feedback from people on it, and I was hearing from lots of people. And like one of the things I had heard, which was surprising, is I had made it kind of an advanced GM book. I said like, you probably want to know what you're doing before you dive into these ideas, right? You probably want to figure it out, and you want to have a bunch of sessions. And I had a bunch of people like, I'm brand new and I'm using your book and it's working fine. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. So then when I wrote Return, I did a lot more research on Return. I took a month off from my day job. I read every freaking book I could find on the topic. Did a bunch of interviews with a bunch of GMs, did a bunch of polls and surveys with GMs that all over the place, and got a lot of this stuff, which sort of coalesced into like what are the common steps that people are following when they do their prep, which kind of led to the 8 steps. And that refined it a lot more. So the end result of that was a system that was more realistic to the way people actually prep, but also focused on the same sort of lazy GM principles of like prepare to improvise and build situations, and separating out your components so that you can piece things together at the table instead of having to build everything, prearranged. And the nice thing about that one is that has worked for the last 8 years. That came out about 8 years ago. And I still that one I still follow, right? Like the original one I didn't, but the new one I still, the same 8 steps are there, and in the new book the same 8 steps are the same 8 steps. It's just a refocus on like what have we learned about those steps in the past 8 years that has changed, and new styles of games and new styles of GMs and new ways that we figured out how to use these steps and to help with prep.
Yeah, because I mean I think like. I don't know about you, Jack, but I've definitely ran sessions before where I've like planned a whole thing and I've got a whole dungeon prepared and everything, and then the players go in a completely different direction, and then that never sees the light of day. I'm sure I could probably be better about reusing certain things, but that's happened to me so many times.
It happens all the time. It happens to everybody, right? And it's a very, very common thing, and it's very common with new GMs. Where I talk to a lot of new GMs and they're like, man, what happened? Like I wrote this whole thing and they did this thing, and it's like, well, because they're not actors in your TV show, right? You're not telling them what to do, right? They're gonna go wherever they're gonna go. So that's always been sort of a central tenet is like, and it's funny because I still have players who think that I'm doing something like that. So I had a new player that had joined my group, a great guy. And I had this big kind of tower that they were going to infiltrate and do stuff. And they came up with this completely zany plan of polymorphing themselves into a mammoth, casting fly. Everybody piles on the mammoth and flies up to the top. They're getting attacked by sturges and Chasme demons on the way. And they get up there, and I'm like, I said, I want to take a quick break. I'm going to go get like a little snack. And so I went to the thing, and I heard him, and he's like, did we ruin like Mike's whole adventure? Like he had a big plan. He must have had a big plan, and we're not doing it. And I'm like, you think I have a plan, right? Like I don't have a plan. Like no, you didn't ruin anything. This is great, right? And it's like, oh, interesting, right? And he just thought that there was like, no, there's one way in. I'm like, no, there's like, 4 ways in. I don't know which one I'm gonna take. So yeah.
So I mean, I'm very curious to get into the whole 8-step system and like talk about it more. But before we do. So on this show, Jack and I have been talking a lot about the Nimble TTRPG system.
I was running it last night. I was running it last night, and I was talking to Evan Diaz, the creator of Nimble, on Discord about my game session earlier today. So I'm well tied in on Nimble.
Well, send it. Maybe you can connect us because we've been trying to get him on the show. I think it'd be really fascinating.
Yeah.
But we only recently started playing it, and we're already kind of blown away, taking our players out of 5th edition, which is what everybody's used to.
Yeah.
And I'm GMing this one. Jack's playing. We've got a few other players, and just kind of seeing what else is out there for us in the TTRPG universe, but also this like it's just how easy it is to run, and how quick. And we were just playing at level 1, and even so, everybody's having a blast and being proactive and reactive and strategic. So, what are your overall thoughts on the system?
I love Nimble. So and I love it, and more importantly, my players love it too. There's lots of systems I love, and there's lots of systems that have things, and some of there's like Numenera and Cypher is a system that I absolutely adore. And my players just don't dig it. And it's like, I mean, if they don't want to play it, like, I'm not going to force them to play a game they don't like. And also, I'm pretty happy playing anything. So if they're like, we'd rather just play 5e, I'm like, okay, that's fine. I've got lots of experience running 5e. We just played a Dragonbane campaign and finished that out. About 25-ish sessions of Dragonbane. And they were pretty ready to move on. Like we'd all had little issues. I still love Dragonbane a lot, but we all had little issues with it. And I said, and I was gonna go to like either 13th Age or Shadow of the Weird Wizard, but I had that collector's set of the box set of Nimble, and I was like, I really liked. I think this might gel. I think like there were parts of it where I'm like, I don't know what the hell what's the idea of a left die? Like what's up with that? Right? Like that's
we're
weird.
We're still wrapping our heads.
Yeah, around that and I'm like, but like and I heard lots of people like, oh, it's really good. And we tried it, and 2 things. One is I really fell in love with a lot of it. I was like, parts of it, I'm like, this is really fantastic, and I love how it's built. And my players are like, wow, we got lots of things to do, lots of cool character options, lots of things. They're 3rd level. They got to 3rd level a couple weeks ago, and they like have lots of things that they're doing. But it still feels like it's moving pretty fast around the table. It's not getting caught up. They're getting used to the idea that they have the 3 action system, so that works really well. I adore minions. I love the way. I think this system has the best implementation of minions that I've seen in any game where I've seen minions. that they're just a die, right? There's
Yeah.
no stat. They're just like, are they a D6 minion or a D8 minion or whatever?
Yeah.
And you can just hurl them out there, and they're risky, right? They're dangerous if you don't deal with them, but they're super easy to deal with if you are dealing with them. And so
Yeah.
I love that. That to me is, I think, the smoothest part for a GM for me. But also, it is built very much to improvise. So there's lots of tables on building monsters on the fly, which I'm doing in my game. I've got these weird ass guys that they're fighting. There's nothing in the book that's going to match these guys. So I'm making up a lot of characters using the thing. Evan was influenced by a book that I had co-authored with a couple of other writers called Forge of Foes, and that one had like, here's how to build 5e monsters with one table, and he sort of took that idea and put it into Nimble of here's a single table that you can build monsters from, and he's still working on it. I got a new version today. I literally got, he's like text. I think that he sent it to me. Somebody sent it to me. He's like, here's a new monster table. I'm like, woo, super excited about the new monster table. One thing, and I've talked to him about this too, and I'm still getting my head around. It's not really a problem, but it's a different way of thinking about the game. Is like the action economy is really tricky to understand from a GM standpoint. That because players can use one of the 3 actions to defend, if you have fewer monster actions than character actions, it almost mitigates the amount of stuff the monsters can do to 0, right? Because everybody's able to defend against everything that comes in, and their defenses are pretty good. And a couple of the characters have really good ways to like intercept and defend and eliminate all the damage. And you're like, it's a lot of things. So the game specifically states like you generally want to have more monsters than characters in a balanced encounter. But sometimes I'm like, I like a couple of big monsters, not solos exactly, but a couple of big monsters. Like, how should I do that? And the answer, it seems to me, is increasing attacks. The number of attacks monsters can do. That's what's going to penetrate armor, not more damage. So
yeah, because eventually they'll run out of those reactions.
So
right?
like I had a couple of big giant spiders they were fighting, and the spider did like 3d8 plus 6 damage. And I said, I'm going to turn that into 3 attacks for 1d8 plus 2 each. And that was a lot scarier for them because they're like, oh, I can defend which one I'm going to defend against, and which and it's still going to break through because I can only defend once, right? So I'm going to be taking some other damage if I don't do this. And that made a couple of monsters more threatening than if they were doing 1 attack each. I think it would be mitigated almost completely. So little tricks like that I'm figuring out as I go, none of which are getting in the way of the rest of it.
Have you noticed that your players are being a little bit more tactical with their movements?
Yeah,
because
definitely.
that was one thing we found right away. We're like, don't want to be in the way of each other and maximizing that the action points.
So it hits a perfect. Well, I don't want to say perfect. Nothing is absolutely perfect, but it's really good. Hits this really good balance of like what I want as a GM and what my players want as players. Where like I'm not a tactical GM, right? I played a lot of 4E, I played a lot of 3.5, and those days are behind me, right? Like I have like a world that I want to explore, and I have, I want the world to evolve based on what they're doing, and I want to describe things, and like, digging into the crunchiest bits of a monster is kind of not something that's grabbing me these days. And the great thing with Nimble is I don't need to, but in the meantime, they do like having those kind of options, right? And that was something they missed from Dragonbane. When we played Dragonbane, they really were limited in the stuff they could do. And that one, like, if you defend, you don't have another action. Like, defending is the only thing you could do. And that was really frustrating for them. So this one, it's like, no, they can defend and they can move. And like, we got one player who's playing a commander, and he burns all his actions before his turn, right? Almost every time. And he loves it. He's like, that's cool. And he's like, I'm working, right? He's like, I'm getting in there and I'm zipping around and jumping in way. And he has like, I'm going to jump in the way of somebody else and then defend again because he can defend twice. And then he's done. And then it's his turn. He's like, I get all my actions back. I'm ready to do it again, right? And so for him, it's his turn order is different because he's sort of out of sync of everybody else, but he enjoys that. And I'm like, hey, that's cool. Yeah,
well, that's one. I didn't even think about it until you mentioned that, but it's kind of making tanking like an actual active thing instead of just I stand here and I get hit. Yeah. It's like you get to decide how you're going to be this party tank, so to speak.
Yeah, and he does have one of his abilities is the ability that if he defends, he gets to attack for free on top of that. So he still gets to like poke whoever he's fighting, and but he feels like he's doing a lot. And, that works out. So, yeah, really, so far. I mean, we're only 3rd level. We played maybe 7 sessions or so, but I'm really digging it.
You wanted to say something?
No, that was I accidentally kneed him in the leg, so unrelated.
So before we get into the Rise of the Lazy Game Master and the 8 steps revisited, we'll say.
Sure.
I wanted to. So you mentioned that you've run some really long campaigns.
Yeah.
So is there any sort of
72, 73 sessions into my current campaign, and we haven't ended yet. Yeah, we're still going.
So for my information, what level are they at?
14, 15th. They just hit 15th.
Okay.
Yeah, first to 15th so far.
Is there any sort of like burnout that you get running the same game, or the players get playing the same game for that long?
It depends on the game. My bigger ones, not really. Like if we got burned out, it's like I think we were all kind of ready to move on from Daggerheart. I was kind of having trouble with it as a GM, and I was willing to say like, hey, I'll figure it out. The problems that I have are something I can figure out if my players love it. But they're also like, I feel like we're doing a lot of extra stuff that we, aren't really getting a big benefit from. And also it was my third game of third game a week, and I was like, man, I'm tired, right? And like, that was one where I was like, oh, it's going to be a little, it's taking me a little extra motivation to get that one done. So I didn't mind stepping back from that one. So that was probably the closest one where I've really had burnout. I've definitely had games where we're like, I had a couple where we were 18th level, and everyone's like, yeah, I think we're done. And I'm like, you want to go 2 more levels? Like, I'll just come up with some stuff for you to fight, galactic horrors, right? And I'm like, we're good, right? And I was like, all right, let's start over. So that has happened, but no, I'm usually like pretty able to keep the story evolving in interesting ways that excite me, and if it excites me, it tends to keep them on board. Like the game I have right now, where they're 15th level, we just had a session on Sunday, and most of it was like planning the end of the world, right? Like the whole campaign is a big Dragon Empire campaign set in Midgard and Kobold Press's Midgard world. And there's like these 9 super powerful dragons that have banded together to build this entire empire, and they're super powerful, and the empire's super tyrannical. And they started at first level, and now they're 15th. And it was like they have all of these resources now to start dealing with this, and they're all planning like where they're going to put what resources in order to actually undo the empire, right? And they're like, and all the players are like, man, it's like playing Risk. It's crazy. And like it was like 4 of us, but they were like, man, this is wild, right? And so they were still into it. And I'm like, we're not done. It's the final arc of the campaign where now they're going to start whacking big dragons. But they really enjoyed the all the thing. Like, hey, we have a special note that we got from the one dragon who's an ally of ours, and if we write the name of anybody on it, he will kill them. Who should we put on that? Right? And so that's a resource we're going to put over here. We also have the previous Sultana who ruled over the empire over here, and she's our friend, so we can figure out how to place her in after we assassinate the current leader, right? And they're planning all this stuff, and so you'd think like that one would be getting stale, and they were jazzed, and I was jazzed. I'm like, I don't know what you guys are gonna do. It's great, right? Like I gave you all these tools, and now I get to watch them come back. Yeah. So I mean, my last other 5e game that was my previous Wednesday game before we played Dragonbane went all the way from 1st to 20th level, and
wow.
Yeah, and that was a blast, and I think literally, and they had a really good time with it, and I had a good time, and I don't think anybody would, I didn't get the feeling from any of the players. They're like, man, it's a struggle to get here to play. And that was 6 20th level characters in 3 different versions of 5e in the same game, right?
God.
And it's still like I was having a fine time. I didn't have any trouble with the prep, and they enjoyed all the fun stuff their characters got to do. So yeah.
I had a question about since you run so many games. And have experience with all sorts of systems. What's your favorite setting? Like in regard to, first, I was curious. Do you play any sci-fi?
Yeah, I get that a lot. I play it. I don't run it, and I don't know why exactly. Like I dig fantasy, right? And I've yet to have, dove into a fantasy when I'd be like, man, I'm just tired of fantasy. I want to do something else. And I think some of it is that, like, even in sci-fi, there's almost always sort of a connection to the real world that fantasy doesn't have. It doesn't have to be that way. I mean, like, Star Wars hardly has any connection to the real world, right? Star Wars has other things, like you have all of the baggage of it being Star Wars, which can be great, right? Like, and some people love to shake that one up. I have a friend of mine who adores running Star Wars campaigns, and he gave me his crawler text. Like, he made a video of the crawler text, and it goes up and says, "Luke is dead," and you're like, "Oh!" I'm like, "Wow!" It had like all the main. It's like Luke, Leia, Han are dead, and you're like, "My God!" Like, that's where we're starting off. Is you
couldn't just happen in some other.
Yeah,
part
and
of the
his point was
universe,
the heroes are the characters, right? So we're not gonna have. He's like, "Look, we're wiping the slate clean. All the superheroes that are in Star Wars, they're all gone, right? And now it's up to you guys." And I was like, "That's pretty
one
great."
way to do it.
Yeah, that's one way to not worry about canon. But yeah, so I still dig fantasy, and I'm certainly not opposed to any of the other genres. I've definitely played lots of games in other genres, and I would totally do so again. But yeah, there's something about the general fantasy, and there's so many different kinds of fantasy worlds to play in. Everything from the dark and grim Shadowdark to super high science fantasy of Numenera to the magic tech worlds of Eberron, to the more traditional kind of East or Western European Forgotten Realms style. That I dig all of them, right? And then I'm making my own, right? I'm working. I wrote a book called City of Arches that had kind of my own world, and I ran a 20th level, first to 20th level game in that. And now I'm working on another one for a couple years from now that is set kind of nearby that's its own thing. So yeah, I always fantasy man.
Fantasy.
That's
Awesome.
what I dig.
I feel like that's more me, and then Jack is more on the sci-fi.
Sure, yeah,
So
and again,
I love them both.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with it, right? I certainly, I'm not against any of it. It's just, but it is interesting that like my first game was the characters fighting the Zhentarim in the Forgotten Realms, and I would totally run another Zhentarim fighting campaign in the Forgotten Realms today, right? Like I'd love to go do that again, right? Like I'm not bored of it at all.
That's awesome. So do you think it's time to get into the rise of the lazy
Sure.
GM?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
So can you just walk us through? Because I'll be honest, I've had so many times where I'm planning for a session, I don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, sometimes it's happened before where I've had to cancel sessions because I'm like,
that's
sorry,
the worst.
guys,
Yeah,
I don't have it.
That's rough, and that always right. When I've heard that where people are like, oh man, I have to cancel the session to prep for a session. And you're like, whoa, like
So something's clearly wrong.
Well, I mean, yeah, if it's not working for you, it's not working, right? Like that's one of kind of my core tenets of like, if it's working, you don't need my help, right? Like if you're if things are working and you're happy, I'm not going to be the one to be like, you're not as happy as you think you are. No, you right? And there's lots of times where I'm like, hey, all of these things serve you. Because I get a lot of questions of like, am I doing secrets right? And I'm like, if it does it work? Like, are you happy with them? Then you're doing it right. Like, I don't you don't owe me anything, and you don't owe secrets anything. Like they're a tool for you, not the other way around. And so, but yeah, if one is in a state where it's like, hey, I'm really kind of stuck on the prep, what do I do? And I think so there's the 8 steps themselves, but there's kind of another part of this, which kind of started. You asked earlier about like where the whole lazy DM concept sort of came from originally, and I had done a very small like audio tip as part of a podcast for a friend of mine's podcast network, my friend Jeff Greiner, who runs the Tome Show. And I did a little piece, and the piece was called like your most important game. And my thesis was your most important game is your next session. Nothing else is important. The future campaign is not important. The games you've run in the past are not important. You've got a bunch of people, like I got a game on Sunday, right? On Sunday, I'm going over to my friend's house, and I'm going to run a 3-hour session. That's it. I don't need to think about anything else, right? I don't need to build out a whole world. I don't need to build, put up the big chart with all the yarn and threads to figure it all out, right? I got 3 hours to fill, and if I can fill it, and we're laughing, and we're having a good time, we're good, right? And so that limiting of that kind of bringing down, because I think this is a very, very common issue with GMing, and one of the reasons why I think a lot of this stuff resonates with people. It's like, man, you go open these games, even brand new ones, right? How much money did they spend making like D&D, the 2025 version of D&D, right? A lot of effort went into that. And yet it doesn't really have great advice on how to prep, right? It's 50 years old. There have been like 7 versions of it, right? And they still don't have really like, here, man, you got a game, like sit down and do this part. It's better. It's got like the little adventure outlines that kind of show you don't need a whole lot, and it's got some stuff in there, but it's also kind of vague because it's like it's a topic with lots of different opinions. But I'm free to have an opinion and say like, hey, So I think one of the reasons why like my stuff tends to resonate is like people are like, oh, thank God, I've got something. I'm out in this giant sea of nothing. Nothing on the horizon. I have no idea where I'm at. I've the limitless options, and I'm drowning, and I don't know what to do. Anyway, here's a life preserver, right? Here's a little raft, right? And that may not be the best raft in the world. It may not be your perfect raft, but it is something that you're like, this I can understand. This is solid. I can run. So having that, narrowing that aperture, bringing things down to say, like, I've just got a session. All I have to do is fill it. Even if I'm in the middle of a 15th level campaign that's 72 sessions, I've got an NPC list that goes on for, God knows. But I don't need all the NPCs. I only need the ones they're going to run into, right? I only need the ones that I know I'm going to need for this next session. That can help focus down. And then to rip through the 8 steps, right? On like, what are the things? Let's see if I can do them off the top of my head. This is real. I almost always get them wrong, and I almost get like a couple of them switched up. Number one is who are the characters, right? Like, you've got the characters. They're in front of you. They're the ones that matter. They're the ones doing things. So putting them in your mind, getting them into your brain first, before you even start thinking about anything else. Who's going to be at the game? What characters they have? Maybe if you want to do some advanced work, what's their background? What are they interested in? What do they dig? Like, what does the character dig in the world? What does the player dig out of the game? Getting kind of some of those thoughts. One of the dirty tricks, and this is something that I've put into Rise that I hadn't had, I've talked about in other places, but I didn't put in a book, was like this idea of a character-driven secret. So what is something that the character knows about or might know about that's happening in the next game, right? So like if you're going to an old ruin and one of the characters is from the region, does that character know something about this ruin? If they're dealing with a magical thing, does the wizard know something about the magical thing? And you might write down just a few words in your notes to say, Athon knows that, the cult of whatever actually used to be part of this other thing, right? And you just kind of write it in your notes.
And that's like a distinction between, because what I find happens a lot with new players, they want to play some edgelord who has a secret backstory that nobody knows about, right. And they come and so I there's a good distinction there between having a secret and like being a secret, I guess.
Yes, right. The secret is it's going to be revealed, right? And it's going to be the other nice trick about that is I think there's a real value in second person, sort of second person information, right? So like, instead of you telling the players something, you're saying your character knows that this is true, and that makes them feel like they did something, right? Like you're putting a thing in their head, but you're making them like my decision to be this class mattered, right? If one of the characters is recognizing that there is a corruption in the water that is not a natural corruption, but a magical corruption, and the spellcaster was the one to figure it out, or the druid was the one to figure out. They're like, it's like, because you're a druid, you can tell that not only is the water corrupted, but it's not a natural corruption. There's something else going on there. Oh, and because you're the wizard, you can see there's a glyph on a tree, and you think that glyph that was etched in that tree is part of what's causing the corruption. And like, oh, okay. Like now they felt like they did something, right? They like, decisions mattered, right? Things right. mattered. So
without necessarily making them roll.
Right. So that's actually a good question. Do you make them roll for that or not? And maybe sometimes you do, and maybe sometimes not, right? And and you can kind of decide, like, sometimes you might have them roll and be like, there's a corruption. You'll understand far more about it if you succeed on a check. Then you might know this corruption is brand new and could only have been done by this particular type of magic that you have run into before. That tells them more information than they have. So you can give some range of flexibility in there. So that's step one, review the characters. Step two is define a strong start. Like, what is you don't have any control over what the hell's going to happen in your game except where it begins. And where it begins, you have control over. So what are you going to do that you can drop in front of them that, can be action focused without necessarily always being combat? Combat is not always a bad way. Combat's pretty good for a strong start, but it's, it'll also eat an hour, right? Depending on the system you're running. So it doesn't have to be combat, but combat's a good example of one. But you want to, like, the world, like I always refer to it as like something happens, right? They sit down, something's happening. Is there a big meteor in the sky? Right? Is there a band of raiders that goes riding past without stopping? Is there somebody, comes into the bar covered in blood and screaming, right? Like something happens. Like what's that thing? And you want to like shock your players out of their phones and out of their day job and out of everything else and be like, we're playing now. And something, now there's a thing. And then if that thing can be like a situation that the characters can immediately interact with, well, now you've drawn them into the game. You get to decide what that strong start is, because it's the only thing that you're going to have any, and maybe that control might be very fleeting, but you have some degree of like, this is the start.
Yeah, I like that, because I've definitely, if you're running a module, I'm curious your thoughts on this, because sometimes you pick up where you left off and you didn't have a clean break and you're, okay, we got a plan for this now, and it's hard to get that push that you're talking about. Yeah. Do you have any tips for that?
Sure, do it anyway. So even like when you're running a published adventure, I mean, like a good tip for published adventures overall is make them your own. Every adventure writer I've ever talked to, and I've talked to many, very well-seasoned adventure writers, even in like organized play, they're still like, you need to make that adventure your own. Like you're the GM. Just like I was talking about, that's the steps serve you, right? Your prep serves you. The adventure serves you too. You don't owe it anything, right? You get to it serves you. It's the instruction manual that they gave you so that you could, build your grill, right? Like do your thing. So make it your own. And yeah, it's because you have some time ahead of time, because you're doing a little bit of prep before the game starts. If you're in the middle of a thing, you're like, wow, they're in the middle of a dungeon. They've been crawling through a dungeon, and we ended with them crawling through a dungeon, and we're going to begin with them crawling through a dungeon. You could still say like, well, what happens in the dungeon? Like, do they hear something? Does a ghost come running past? Does, somebody suddenly start to feel violently ill? Like, what can you drop in at that moment that still offers a strong start, even when you're in the middle of an event? And Rise, I'm pretty sure this is true. If not, it really ought to be, and good thing we're still working on it. But I think Rise has like, hey, here's a bunch of strong starts when you're in the middle of stuff, right? Like here are things that you can do when you're in the middle. I'm almost sure we've got that in there. Here's a bunch of stuff that you can do that gets you started even if you're in the middle of a session, and I think can still help give you ideas if you're in the middle of a session or middle of an adventure that's a published adventure. That can help there too.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So what's step
three? Right. So step 3 is scenes, and scenes is one of the ones where I was like, I think it's time to start writing some other stuff, because scenes is evolving. Like I've evolved how I've used scenes. I'm hearing other people evolve how they use scenes beyond what we had originally written in return, which still works totally, but there's more we can do with it. And the idea of scenes is like, these are the things that may happen in your session, right? And the key word is may, right? They're not necessarily absolutely sure they will happen. And the purpose of it is for you to get your hands around what's going to happen in the session, or even to just feel like you have your hands around it. Maybe you don't, and maybe it goes wild. But it helps you have some confidence when you're going in and you feel like, I've got stuff ready to go. Maybe it goes this way, maybe it doesn't. But I've got stuff ready to go. How it has evolved are the kinds of things that you can put in scenes. And now I kind of refer to it as the junk drawer of prep, because you can kind of put anything in there. So a scene can be an actual scene. The characters are going to meet with a character. The characters are going to a castle. They're going to meet with the viceroy of a king in order to convince them that they need to get the army ready for the invading hobgoblin army or whatever, right? And you're like, okay, that's a clear scene. But you also say, the scene might be choosing one of 3 new quests that they're going to take for the next session. So I'm going to put those 3 quests in the scenes. A scene might be explore the dungeon, right? And you're like, well, that could be 28 scenes. There's 28 rooms in the dungeon, right? But you're not going to write all 28. You're going to be like, exploring the dungeon is the scene. So sometimes you might have like, characters get the quest to go into a dungeon, characters explore the dungeon, characters fight a boss, right? It could be like something as easy as that. Sometimes, though, it's more refined what you put into scenes. They have bigger stuff there. Sometimes you're taking other parts of your prep and putting it into a scene. So if you know a scene is with a particular NPC, you might put the NPC in the scene, even though it's also part of step 5, right? I think it's step 5. So, you have a lot of fluidity and flexibility. Sometimes your scenes are linear. Sometimes they're branching out. But what you're not doing is building a giant thing for them. You're just making a list of, 5 scenes. And like one of my thoughts is like, most sessions are like 3 to 4 hours. that's like 5 scenes is really what you're going to get, right? You're not going to get 20 big scenes. You're going to get like 5 meaty ones, right? So what are the 5 scenes that you've got in your game? And then if you have things like, also, I need to get a little bit of stuff in here so that I know what to prep next time. Maybe I'm going to have the options for what choices they're going to make at the end of the session. And I'll list them in my scenes to say, like, where do you want to go next? Like, you're getting ready to I literally had one that was like, which one of the 3 ancient dragons do you want to kill next? Right? And it was like, here are the 3 that are top on your list. And they're like, Lash Marak, we don't like her. She's really mean. I'm like, okay, Lash Marak it is, right? Like, and now I'm building out a whole multi-session game about the infiltration of Lash Marak's, lair, so they can go kill an ancient red dragon, which is not going to be easy. So, that's the scene step. Secrets and clues is number 4. This is kind of the one that's most unique among the various steps of the 8 steps. Also, it was the reason that I wrote Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master, because I was like, this is really a powerful tool. And the idea with secrets and clues are, what are the 10 secrets the characters might learn in the next session? And the secrets are like fortune cookies. They're small. They're like one line. Here's a little information about this weird dark deity. Here's a little bit of information about the boss and what they're up to. Here's some background on one of the NPCs. It could be any kind of information that, is generally intended to be relevant to the characters, relevant to the session and to the game that's going on. It could still be full of lore and still give people, just spark in their imagination more than it's giving like a super practical thing right now. And the important part is you don't define where they learn it. So you write them down, but you don't say where they're going to pick it up. And this is that prepare. Like that. Yeah, and this is the prepare to improvise part. So now you're running your session, and they're going off whatever direction. Doesn't matter. Your 10 secrets are still there, and you get to pick them. And you're probably not going to hit all 10, but you don't know which of the 10 you're going to pick. And 10 is enough that you can usually get it, hammer them out in about a half hour. I try to aim the prep at a half hour to an hour, right? That's like a reasonable amount of time for prep. And I've seen lots of people who manage to get the 10 secrets down. I've seen people that really have trouble with it, and that's one of the reasons I'm like, hey, don't overthink your secrets. Just get them, just write them down, right? And
that's important, because the number of times that players have oh, what is that? And they roll, and then you
don't have anything, right?
It's something. Yeah, I'm sure it's flipping through notes.
Yeah, well, and I still do that, right? Because sometimes the secrets that I have are not the thing they were looking at, right? And so you have to scramble anyway, and you're always going to have to scramble a little bit. Like, there was these 3 pillars of gameplay that came out with D&D 5th edition. They kind of defined them in 5e as combat, exploration, and roleplay. And combat's really well defined. Get into fights, kill monsters. Roleplay is pretty well defined, right? Sometimes it's verbal discussion between a GM and a player acting in character. Sometimes it's rolling checks for influence and other things. We kind of understand that. But exploration, like, what the hell is that? That's everything, right? Like, everything. And it is, right? If you talk to the people who brought that up, they're like, it's anything from going across the overland from one place to another, or going on a journey along like Huck Finn on a raft down the river, or picking a lock, right? And what clued it in for me, what really helped was, like, I don't know what the end of that is supposed to be. And secrets and clues are like, that's the treasure at the end of exploration stuff, right? So when they're doing these exploration things, like you said, they roll a check to look at a monument, and now you're like, I've got information about that monument I'm going to share, right? Because I did my secrets, and it turns out the secrets lined up. So that was really helpful. The book Rise talks a lot about what kinds of secrets could there be. There's 20 different kinds of secrets I outlined, so not even just the secrets themselves, but what are the all the different types of secrets that could be there. And importantly, it's something that people really wanted and need is, how can they be discovered? Right? What are all the ways? So I have 20 ways that they can be discovered, right? And so there's lots of like ideas in there to give you specific examples of how secrets can be implemented. On top of the fact that I think there's like at least 70 example secrets among different scenarios that I've got throughout the whole book. So there's lots of specific examples of secrets, but then also lots of guidance on what kinds of secrets you might think about and how the characters might pick them up.
In regard to secrets, what's your opinion on puzzles for players?
I don't like them. I got lots of trouble. So it depends. I like the game to be the puzzle. right? I like the situation and what's going on in the world and tricky bits I got to deal with. That to me is the fun part of the puzzle, and it's evolving. Right? It's what I don't like is the Skyrim. I mean, I love Skyrim to death, right? But it's like, why did they put anything like you got to get in the Lich's vault, but in order to get in the Lich's vault, you have to solve the Sudoku. It's like nobody has a Sudoku on their front door, right? Like nobody's like protecting their car with a Caesar cipher, right? So like, why would these super powerful guys be protecting their most important thing with a puzzle anyone could solve if they're smart enough, right?
That's so funny you bring up Skyrim, because every time I try to replay it,
Yeah.
the first time I hit a puzzle in a dungeon,
Yeah.
that's when it gets uninstalled.
Right, there's like
I'm done.
Right, they're like, you got to line up these 3 pillars with the right symbols on them in order to open the vault door. And you're like, what do you? Who are you? Then this is like a puzzle issue I've got, which is like, if you were the designer of the puzzle, who are you trying to keep in and who are you trying to keep out? And it's like people who are really good with spatial awareness, right? They're the only people that should be able to get my magic sword. So I have that kind of cognitive issue with it. The other one is they're really hard to prep. Like, they take a lot of time to get them right. And then, like, half your players like them and half don't, if you're lucky. And then 3 of your players are busy checking their phones while everyone else is figuring out the Sphinx's riddle.
Yeah, and I don't think this is an original idea, but it makes it so that your players are
Yes.
solving it, not your player characters.
Yeah. Well,
so it's like it just takes you out of the game completely. Are you a smart person or a smart character? Because
Well, there's a couple interesting things there. Like, so one is a common puzzle kind of good guidance for puzzles is there better be 3 different ways to get around it. So maybe the player can figure out the Sudoku, or maybe they roll a check and get through. Or maybe they can also just bash through the wall, right, with a lot of checks. So you offer several, but you're also like, I could just not do any of those, right? Like
the perfect puzzle for any TTRPG is a locked door.
Yeah,
that's it.
Right. Or like, my favorite is like the 2 bandits in the woods, right? Where like your superpower, you got your 11th level characters, they're going through their woods and there's 2 bandits. And the bandits are sitting there talking gossip about things the players probably have done. And they're in the way between wherever the characters are going. And they're like, should we kill them? Like, they're 2 bandits. We could fireball them and be done. Yeah, but they might, should we talk to them? Like, I don't know. Maybe should we pretend to be other bandits? Right? Should we make an owl sound? Right? And then they get to decide like all this stuff that they want to do. And I love it, right? It's one of my favorite things because it's like the simplest thing in the world, right? There's no risk, right? And I've had it. I've had my player. I did it in my Dragon Big or my big Dragon Empire game where like they were like 11th level and got attacked by 2 bandits who were trying to rob them. And in the end, they're like, we like your moxie. Here's 50 gold, right? Like, I think they stabbed one of them. I think they stabbed him with like a light sword. They had like a sunblade, and they just lightsabered him like through the chest, right? The other guy was gone.
Do it.
And then the other guys were like, you just start a new gang. Here's 50 gold. We'll bankroll you. So, right? And so those are like kind of puzzles, right? They're figuring out the situation, but they're contextually relevant. They make sense. So yeah, I have strong opinions on puzzles, and I have lots of people who love them. And hey, God, go with God, right? Like, I'm not in your way,
Sudokus.
right? Enjoy your Sudoku. I did them. I've got articles on Sly Flourish about how to make Sudoku puzzles, so it's not like I'm making fun of other people, right? I did this.
I've done it.
Yeah, I did this stuff.
I've done mastermind puzzles.
That's right,
in
mastermind
my first
puzzles.
home game.
Exactly. I got a whole thing on mastermind puzzles.
Yep.
It's not. Yeah, it's all right.
So that's
it's been a long time since I did them.
Secrets and puzzles, I guess.
Yeah, puzzles are not one of the steps. I'll tell you.
No.
Of all of them. Yeah. What the other one? Monsters, NPCs, locations, and treasure are the 4. Give you half of them real quick.
Sure.
You can dive in any of those. But then, and I think like the key to those 4, like locations, monsters, NPCs, and treasure, is that you're outlining all of them separate from one another. And that way you can change things at the game and be like, yeah, I've got a good list of locations that I can use. And I didn't decide which monsters are there yet. I can let the story dictate what monsters happen to be there, what number of monsters happen to be there. I could also say, like, man, they just fought 3 big fights. Do I really need to have another big fight? Like, maybe I'll just have like 1 dude, right? Maybe it'll be a smaller number of guys. And you can again, you're prepping to improvise. I like to think about it like little ingredient dishes that you're putting on the table to cook at the table rather than having the pre-cooked meal that you're bringing to the table. Mm-hmm. And then all of those in the new book have kind of expanded to say, what other kinds of things can you put in here? Locations used to have a very kind of focused formula still does in return. We've expanded on that to be like, you don't need this level of detail when you have 40 rooms in a dungeon. Instead, you could have just like an evocative name for each room, or maybe you don't even have anything for every room. You have a list of potential chambers that they might have while they're exploring, and you can drop them in while they're going based on what kind of makes sense.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
You have another question, Jack? I've got so many more. I know we're kind of rapidly approaching the end of the show,
we're
but
cool, yeah.
let's see what we can do before we have to wrap up.
I've got one maybe outside of the wheelhouse here.
Sure.
Just a personal preference thing. Killing players.
I don't like, if I kill my players, they won't come back.
It's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. Killing player characters.
Okay. Yeah. It took a weird turn. So it happens. My Shadow Dark game, not only did we lose, I think, like 18 characters, they made a shirt out of it. One of my players made a T-shirt, and we all have it, where on the back of the T-shirt has all of the characters that died and all of the ways that they died. Which is hysterical. And so that one, like, we have a lot of memories of crazy ways characters died in that game because Shadow Dark was pretty lethal when we were playing it. And that was one where the story took massive turns depending on what characters were still alive from session to session.
Yeah.
It happens. It happens in my games. I'm not like I relish the death of character kind of thing, kind of situation. The kind of game I'm playing is also going to have a big dependency on that. Some games have that sort of lethality built in. I'm going to be running a Dolmenwood game for my Sunday group, I think, when we're done with our big-ass Dragon Empire game. And I have it, I'll probably give them max hit points. So I think I'm going to violate the rules right off the bat by saying, like, I want to give you guys a little bit more than, like, 2 hit points, right? I had one guy who played a Shadow Dark character, and he rolled 3 levels in a row. So he had 3 hit points at level 3. And I don't think he made it, right? But he was a good sport. He hung on to that character and rode him as long as he could. So yeah, it definitely, I'm neither for nor against character deaths. I let the situation in the story happen as they happen.
So something we started doing on the show the last couple of episodes is we've been doing, D&D or TTRPG horror stories.
Yeah.
So do you have anything that comes to mind of just like a terrible thing that happened in a game? Maybe someone left over it. I mean, you've been playing for long enough. I'm sure there's been a problematic player or something that's happened.
Yeah, I'll share someone else's story. And I'm not going to say who it was.
No.
And nor will I say what game he's playing in. But I had a friend of mine, we were at a convention, and a good friend of mine came up, and we were kind of talking about it. And he said, I played in an Alien game, and we spent half the session having the rules explained to us. And then we had the first scene where all of us had to roll for every article of clothing we were putting on when we got out of the stasis tanks, right? Like when they got out of their hyperspace, or not, whatever it is, their hypersleep chambers. They had to roll for every single piece of clothing that they had to put on. And it was like going around from character to character for each piece. So it was like 12 turns to get it on. And then they had to have the briefing about what the scenario was, but all of them are half dressed. So they have one sock and a shirt, and nothing else because they failed the rolls on the other things that were going on. And they never actually got to conduct any mission, right? Everything was so based on checks that were being done and being overly explained. And my friend was very gracious. Like, I think the GM was just a little bit overwhelmed. Like, they hadn't run it before. They really hadn't a lot of experience with RPGs, and they kind of thought this is how it's supposed to be. No good time management, and didn't work out. But he's like, oh, and my friend is super like into everything, and he's like, yeah, that was not a great one. So,
yeah, roll for pants is
the
not
rolling for
hear.
each sock. Right, was a little too micromanagement. Yeah.
I mean, I've seen Alien, going back to the sci-fi thing, like 100 times probably, and they
all came in fully clothed. Yeah,
they have underwear. Right. Then in the next scene, they have clothes. Mm-hmm. There you go.
Vasquez is doing her pull-ups. Right, they're all ready to go. Right.
So before we wrap up, do you have one tip, just one small micro tip that you're going to find in this book, Rise of the Lazy GM, is to get people excited okay, we got to pick this up? One little thing.
Yeah, something that I think something I'm hoping people get really excited about when they get it is just opening up and seeing that it's just packed with examples, right? Lots of rollable, like everything that can be a rollable table is a rollable table. Maybe you're never going to roll on it. Maybe it's just there for inspiration, but maybe you need a little boost and you're like, I'm just going to roll a 20 and see what I get in this because I can't think of a good strong start. Let me just roll one. So there's I don't know if there's 100. There might be 100 tables in there. I was thinking about it, and it's like I have 400 room descriptions, right? 20 sets of 20, right? So there's 20 different adventure locations with 20 like common chambers you might find in an adventure location in there. So it's just packed with that kind of material that is both kind of easy to digest. Like you don't have to read all of that, right? But you know it's there, and you know that you've got these tools available to you that are both in the chapters themselves, and then there's a giant appendix in the back that's got tons and tons of stuff in them. So I really wanted to just make it as super table practical, useful as possible by packing it with these kind of details that where like it's easy to talk about the philosophy a lot, but like where's the rubber meeting the road is a real thing that I wanted to do with this and refined. We're still refining it, right? Like it's the current version of the book has gone to Scott Fitzgerald Gray, my editor, a veteran RPG editor for many years, for a couple decades. And he's starting to work on it. We're still going to be like refining that whole thing to make it like what I'm hoping is the most practically useful book on GMing advice that you can find. So, I
mean, it sounds like it will be. Is there any sort of pressure now that you've got the Kickstarter launch?
You kidding me?
How you feeling?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, like the Kickstarter. So there was a ton of pressure before. It was pressure the minute I sat down to write it. Because I've already got a bunch of books and people like the books. And why am I writing something new? There's all these other ones. And I'm like, because there's more to say, right? There's more on this that needs to be said. And the old books are absolutely still good, right? Everything in there I still stand by. I mean, besides original Lazy Dungeon Master, which is like, hey, people still like it and they still use it. Like, great. I don't, but I'm glad you do. Right? But there's very little of the older material where I'm like, yeah, that just doesn't work anymore. There's definitely a couple of spots, right? But generally speaking, it's like, no, all that works. And Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master, the most popular of them, everything in there I think is still valuable, right? I still look at it. I still regularly reference my own book, which is some level of egotism. But like, I find useful things in there. And I'm finding now I'm doing the same thing with the manuscript for Rise, where I'm running a game or I'm running a new session. Let me go to the session 0. I got a checklist in the book. Let me go read that session 0 checklist and make sure I'm doing the things that I'm recommending I do. And then I look and I'm like, oh, hey, this is really useful. Yeah. So that matters. But yeah, so the pressure to, write a new one. And then your thing is like, does anybody want this anymore? Right? I don't know. I hope, right? Like, I know that this is, it is.
Yeah, you got two right here.
Right. But you're like, right. So like, and my wife, Michelle, we're business partners in this whole thing. Right. And we were out for a walk and I think it was like on day 6 of the Kickstarter. And we were out walking. I said, I think we're at a good spot now where like we haven't had anything where a large number of people are like, this part of it is screwed up, right? Like, this is something we wanted that you don't have. We have lots of like little requests coming in like, oh, I really wish it was in a small trade size rather than a full book size, or is it in softcover versus hardcover? And we have general answers, but we're getting like 1 and 2 of those. We're not getting like 100 people saying, I read your chapter on dungeon crawls and I think it's completely wrong. And if the rest of your book is as wrong as this, I don't want to do it. Right. That would be kind of an element of pressure where when you're bringing this out and exposing it to folks, that you're always nervous about it. Now I've written most of the book in the open with my patrons. So, a lot of folks on my Patreon have been watching this book come out in chapter by chapter since like last summer. And I got lots of feedback from them on it, right? And they're not shy about telling me what's working and what's not working. And some of them where we really dissected, because they're also playing a lot of games too. So they're like, well, I'm playing some of, how do you handle, how does this work for a more procedurally driven old school game, vice a very open, fluid, story-focused game like Daggerheart, Dolmenwood versus Daggerheart, right? Very different kinds of games. And we would talk about that, and I'd say, well, what about this, or what about this, and then we'd go around until like, okay, this looks like it would fit, and this is useful advice, whichever one you're running, right? So that I think so. Yeah, a lot of pressure on that. Then of course managing the Kickstarter, like I'm working 16-hour days, 6 days a week, right? So, making sure that's all handled, and that on top of all the rest of the stuff that we're doing, we're also doing marketing every day, right? We're enjoying shows like this, right, every day. So a lot of stuff going on there. Then it'll be done. And then, and I had some people who actually were like kind of upset that I would even say something like this. When you get the money, I don't look at it as like, hey, we got a big pile of money. It's like, no, that's debt, right? I got money for something that doesn't exist yet. And now we got to make sure that exists and that it's really good. And that all of the people who bothered to throw money at us early, like a year early, that the book that they get, they open up and go, wow, that was money well spent. Like, I really like that book. So doing everything we can and being very open with them. They're going to see early versions of it. They're going to, I'm talking a lot about it, right? I'm doing articles every week about like, hey, when we talk about adventure types, this is what I mean. And there's examples of it in the preview, right? Like if you like the 36-page preview, you're probably going to like the book because that's like 20% of the book is in the preview, right? There's a good chunk of it. So a lot of pressure on that. And then like I'll feel really good about it in a year, right? When it's done and it's in people's hands and people love it and all of that. So
I have a lot of faith that it's.
I mean, I wouldn't have done it if I didn't think I could do it, right? If I wouldn't have, we wouldn't have gone through the activity. And it's not our first rodeo. Like I've done, I think 10 other Kickstarters, and we've always been on under time and on budget. And
that's good for Kickstarter.
Yeah. And I look back at the books that we have made, and I'm very proud of them, right? And I sort of have these love-hate relationships with the books as I'm working on them. Usually it's in the the first or second major editing pass where I don't want to ever have anything to do with the book again. And I'm just so tired of reading it. I've read it 4 times. There's still a lot to do. It's, the light is not yet at the end of the tunnel on actually getting out. And I'm like, God, I'm tired. Like, why do I do this? And then usually I get, then we get it out into people's hands. And just about the time it's delivered is when I'm tired of it. And then I get the feedback on it. And then I'm excited because I'm seeing people who are seeing it for the first time and they really like it. So
that's awesome. Your commitment to your Kickstarters and the work itself is tremendous. 16-hour days. Like, hey, that's awesome. Wow. And thank you for carving out a piece for us.
No, I mean, this is great.
Very appreciate
I told it. So, I forget. I've mentioned it. I'm like, oh, I'm on, no, this is a fantastic show. I'm on 5 of them this week. And, and I'm like, these are great. But like, as you can tell, I don't think this is a big surprise. I love talking. Right? And I love talking about RPG stuff. So I'm like, I wouldn't do them if I didn't enjoy it. Like there's a lot, and I wouldn't do this whole thing if I didn't enjoy it. So I'm happy, right? Like I'm waking up at 6 a.m. I grab my phone. I'm like, time to edit an article before Michelle gets up, right? So that she can edit it when she's up, and then I'm off doing other things. But I enjoy it, right? I'm jazzed about it. I love working on it. There's few elements of this whole thing where I'm like, oh, like I'm not a big fan of international taxes. I'll tell you,
yes.
all the brand new EU regulations for taxes, not the exciting part of the RPG hobby. I'll tell you. So there's parts like that where you're like, oh God, right? But most of it is really fun. Like I'm really, both Michelle and I are really enjoying what we're doing every day.
Well, listen, Mike, thank you so much for joining us here.
Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Seriously, it's been a pleasure. I mean, I have 1,000 more questions, but unfortunately we've run out of time. So we'll just have to have another conversation.
You bet. Happy to come on again and cover more questions.
Thank you.
Sure, that was great.
So to wrap up, do you want to point our listeners to your Kickstarter and anything else you want to plug?
Sure.
Right now?
Easiest way is go to SlyFlourish.com. It's the blog that I've been keeping up for close 18 years, I think, at this point. And right at the top, you'll see a big link for Rise of the Lazy Game Master, and you click that, it goes right to Kickstarter. There's a little picture of the cover, fantastic cover by Jack Kaiser. You can click on that, and that goes right to the Kickstarter as well. So let's see, through the power of audio is the easiest way to go find it, because me reciting the URL.
We'll leave a link. We'll leave a link. We can figure that out.
Yep.
So listen, Mike, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This has been just such a pleasure to talk with you. And yes, everybody, please go check out The Rise of the Lazy Game Master, because we all need a little bit more laziness in our Game Master careers, right?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Thank you so much again.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a great pleasure.
All right. Well, see you soon.
See you later.